Happy Friday, everybody. Darko, I got an idea. I was thinking about our situation and I was thinking about how we could overcome this and what are we missing? You know what I mean? What are we missing? Because it got to be something that we're missing. Because we have the materials, whether it's to fragmented or together, we shouldn't be 8-26. I just can't agree with that. I understand with youth there's gonna come these highs and lows, but 8-26 is crazy. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, what can be a solution, a possible solution? And I'm like, let me think on it. So I thought about it for a whole 10 minutes, gave it a whole 10 minutes of thought. And Darko, I think I got it. I think I got something that might lead you to the thing, the solution. So it might not be a solution, but it might lead you to the thing that might lead you to a solution. It's an option. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at the fact, I'm understanding the fact that the NBA is a man's game. You know what I mean? College is a young man's game. And everything is age appropriate, right? So when I'm looking at the NBA and I'm looking at these coaches with these philosophies and these concepts, they have the mature NBA guy in mind, right? The experienced, seasoned guy. Because they don't want to have a player they got to work and fix and build up to be the player that they need. They are in their mind when they come up with their concepts, their fantasized theory of the way things could work according to what they see in the game and the problems that they think they're solving and the angles in which they can solve them. They are looking at it in real time and not taking into consideration the assets you have in front of you are not the prototypical assets you had in mind, right? So some may be further behind or further along than expected. So when you're looking at a guy with a young team, and like I said, the NBA is a man's sport. You're matured, experienced adults who are professionals, who know how to separate their life and their lifestyle outside of the game from being a professional athlete. You know what I'm saying? So now you have young guys who have been playing a totally different way most of their lives. Now they have to adapt to this new way. So they have to unlearn all those other habits that they have in order to do what you need them to do and take on these new habits, which is that's the friction that I'm seeing. That's where the turnovers come from, and all that comes from you're used to doing things a certain way, and now you have to put that to the back burner, even though that's your comfort zone, and try it a new way, and that's where the mistakes are happening. So you have these young guys who are coming from college, who are used to doing things a certain way, coming into the league, and then you have guys in the NBA who are used to doing things, especially coming from a different teams, and they're used to doing things to separate, and you're saying, I need all of y'all to put aside the way that you're used to doing things and do it this way and win. Sounds crazy, but that's what we're expecting. Like it sounds ridiculous when you think about it, but you're like, we want to win, right? So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, all right, he might have a system that does work, but it might be, the timing of it with this group might be off. He might have to break it into baby pieces and feed it into everybody bit by bit. You know what I mean? Kind of giving the medicine with the candy type of thing, right? So I'm thinking, since we got a young team, what would be the perfect thing for them to have to make the transition from what they're used to and what they enjoy, and you put in what works, which is just atypical from what they're used to doing. The best way to do it for me is like for him to look at what they did in the 90s. Not in the NBA, but in college. For some reason, college coaches in the late 80s, early 90s, all the way up to the early 2000s, they were able to take kids who were teenagers and make them into functioning basketball players. And college is tough. Like, don't get it confused. College without basketball is tough. You have so much free time. You got all these activities. Like you on your own for the first time. You outside. It's a lot of discipline that you got to have. You got to have structure. Time management is important. And these guys are used to working within that construct. time management, and a lot of things being set up differently. And for some reason, they gravitate to those systems a lot faster than what you see them gravitating to the NBA systems. When in actuality, the college system may have more complexities and complexions to it and layers to it than the NBA system that you might be playing. But for some reason, they attach to it a lot faster. It takes them a few weeks, some a few months, but it doesn't take long before it's a functioning thing. At the professional level, you're seeing them have a problem to latch on because basketball it hasn't changed. For some reason, these kids aren't connected. I think Darko should go back and look at those 90s, what Coach K was doing, what Coach Boeheim, Lou Conasecca, John Thompson, Richardson, Chaney, all these coaches that were getting through to these kids. He has to find out how they got through to the young player, because basketball is from high school to college is a big ass jump. Because you're going from playing against 14, 15, 16-year-olds as a senior at 17 to playing against 18, 19, 20, 21, sometimes 22-year-olds in college. And you're playing against 1-3-1s, boxing ones, man-to-man. You got all these different variations and temperaments and traveling. It's a lot more complex coming from high school to the NBA than from college to the NBA, right? But for some reason, that learning curve is just different. It happens faster. He has to. I think in order for him to get to the young players, he has to figure out how they do it in college. How do they get these kids to switch from what they did in high school to that complex college atmosphere and get results immediately? A lot of it is they rely on this juniors and seniors. We don't have a lot of that. We have a young team, and a lot of teams in college are pure young. You had the Fab Five and a bunch of other teams who started a lot of freshmen. He has to figure out how they connected. How did they get them to buy in and understand? Not saying it got to be mistake free, but how did they get them to buy in? Just from a social and philosophical standpoint, how did they teach that? How did they teach all those? How did they get them to catch on that fast in those environments? Going to Michigan State as a Michigan player, going to North Carolina as a Duke player, traveling the world, playing these games, being on prime time for the first, like all of it. And yet they still were able to latch on and play at a high level in college. And how did they get those kids to latch on to those systems? We have a young team. I think there's a lack of connection, because these kids should be catching on a lot faster to this, because they don't have any angst to them. They don't have any biases to them, really. They're coming in fresh snow. So they're coming in open-minded. They don't know what to expect. So it should be easier to get through to them than the veteran, because veterans are already set in their ways, and some matured NBA players who are year 5, 6, and 7, they're set in their ways kind of too, and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, what they're receptive to, what they're not receptive to, when they're in the mood to do this, when they're in the mood to do that. We got young players who are simply just new to the experience, and that energy isn't being harnessed and used correctly. And I think he should go back and look at what the college coaches were doing in the 90s, from 90 to 2003 maybe, and see how they connected to those kids. You know what I mean? How did Coach K connect with McDonald's All-Americans? How did Valparaiso coach connect with when you get to the NCAA tournament, you have all these different variations of basketball players and archetypes of teams and talents and all of this, and then you see it all come together. But one thing for sure, two things for certain, all these kids came from high school to college and they caught on. We're talking about study hall, we're talking about social, situations, relationships, first time being on your own, all this stuff. And you're still performing at a high level playing basketball as a kid. But yet when you get to the NBA and the learning curve is a lot shorter, it's not the same. There's something lost. The connectivity isn't there. We should have these players so hyped to play these games, so enthusiastic to play these games, to show that they know what they're doing and to show the world that they know how to play. That's missing. That's one thing about freshmen. They all, like, when you look at young freshmen and you look at sophomores, they're proving themselves, and there's this certain energy, and we're lacking that energy. We have young players who are coming out of college early, who came out of college early, and you got to tap into that. And remember, damn, they might have missed that experience. How can I connect that to this? Because the NBA is not as complex as people think. They're expecting these players to come in to know, to have gotten the tutelage and the wisdom and knowledge in college to be ready for the pros. They're not expecting to have to teach you. They're expecting you to know a lot of basketball, a lot about concepts, theories, and know how to perform and know how to be a professional. That's why you got drafted. You were the best among your peer group of amateurs. So they're expecting you to know way more than enough to catch on to what I'm telling you immediately. We're not getting that. So we might have to take a step back and see, how do you teach the baby? How do you teach the teens? How do you teach? And I know he has a sociology degree. I know he has, all these different degrees, but it's different in theory when it comes in practice. Because remember, you're dealing with professionals who outside of that professional realm of basketball are kings. They're getting paid more than, they're in the top 10% or 1% in some cases, or 0.111% of society economically. So when they leave these courts, they the kings. They for the streets. They outside. But you're trying to get this production on the court. He has to figure out how to do that. How to get that energy from them, how to use that energy, how to use the fact that they're coming in without any biases. It's like we're missing something. And it's not, you could say it's the system. It probably is the system. He may have to dial it back a bit and find something that they all connect to systematically, and then implement pieces of what he thinks works, that 5 second. But he's going to have to dial back from that 5 second. You have to be a more polished professional, not just a player. You have to be a more polished professional to make that work, because 5 seconds is not a lot of time. That 5 second offense is, everything has to be premeditated. You have to be experienced. You have to be seasoned. You have to be ready for that. And I don't think we have the players that are ready for that. I think we should give them something that they are ready for, and place, instead of saying, I want, my system is this, find a system that they can all connect to and then build from there, as opposed to trying to do it your way right now. You might have to take this year to give them something to all connect to, and then give them pieces and bricks of what you want to build after you build a foundation of, this is how y'all play together. This is what y'all comfortable with. But within that comfortability, I have to add some complexion to it and some complex things to it to get us where we're trying to go. You know what I mean? But we got like, we all agree that we got something special, but it's missing something. And we keep saying it's the players. It's not. We're not missing pieces. We're missing a mentality. We're missing context. We're not it's like players are trying to do what he wants them to do, but it goes against what they normally do and what they're thinking is right in that situation. That's where most turnovers happen. When you're instinctively used to doing A, but now your coach got you doing B. And now it's like, damn, I could take them, but the play is for me to do this, turnover. As opposed to doing what you know what I mean? So now you start to question yourself, and it creates a bigger problem. You know what I mean? And it's like I understand he has the right intentions. He knows his system can work, but you have to look at your personnel and give them what they can utilize until, which is what Chicago did. They really didn't have a system. It was like, give Mike the ball and let him go. That's what Doug Collins had, right? And then that was their foundation. They had a foundation that they loved playing within that space. Then they were like, yo, why don't y'all use the triangle? Guys were like, hell no, I'm not using the fucking triangle. We're not doing that because we got something that already got us to the Eastern Conference Finals. And they were like, nah, you got to use the triangle because that thing will get you to the top. That'll take, similar to that, his 5 second theory. They felt like Tech's winners concept of a game would help them beautifully. with Michael Jordan's star power and abilities and the team they had. They just had to make sense of everybody's talent, and the triangle enabled to do that, right? So you, the way that they were able to get that done was they had, of course, Phil Jackson, magnificent people person when it comes to getting guys to buy into a system, individually and as a collective, right? He allowed them to play the way they normally like to play, that Doug Collins system, but then bits and pieces he added the triangle. Whenever it fell apart, they were able to go into some of the ideologies, like letting Mike take over, letting Scotty run a certain way, and then they'll get back into the triangle. But the triangle became their foundation over time. It didn't happen like in the first year the way it looked. No, it was a gradual progression, but they were allowed to use what was working in the beginning with Doug Collins. They used that as a reference point, and then they added bits and pieces, and the structure was there as far as the triangle. But when it broke down and things got a little hectic, they allowed them to go back to what they were comfortable with, and then they come back to it. And I think we have to find something that they're all comfortable with first, and then put forth that concept and theory that he has. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the only thing he can do, because right now he's losing the confidence and the momentum that he had coming in. And if he wants to maintain like the stature, because we believe that he's the answer to this situation, getting us over this hump, you know what I mean, and getting us to the next space. There's probably going to be another coach taking on from there, or whatever it is. He may be, but he's the coach that's going to get us out of this phase, if at the least. But he might have to dial it back. I understand he wants to show the world that he's a coach and he can do all these great things. But first, you have to show that you can coach. Not so much coach a system, a new innovative way of doing things, but you can coach the personalities and the personnel that you have, and you can deal with that reality despite how you feel things can work according to your fantasized thoughts and concepts. You know what I mean? The thing that got you hired, that's cool, but it's like when you have a job interview, you're gonna talk about your qualifications and all the things that you can do. And then when you get hired, you look at the job, you're doing the job, and you come up with a system to do the job according to how things are at that job. Not how you want to do them and how you think they should go, but you master the foundations of the job. And then you implement some of your ideas here and there, piece by piece, to make your job a little easier. But you don't necessarily have to use all of your concepts. You might not need all of that. You might just need a piece of that infused with what they're comfortable doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think he should go back and check out or talk to some of those old school coaches while they still here, while they still want to pass that wisdom along, and say, how did you connect to these young kids? How did you get them in? What is it? And then take parts of those systems because sometimes you got to find the things that they can all relate to. They all play college ball. What system in college do they all agree with liking? All right, let them use that. Find that as a foundation, offensively and defensively, and then start to implement your stuff as they become more familiar and comfortable with playing together and the whole 9 yards, as opposed to saying, let's start with this structure, which is uncomfortable already and new to y'all. You have to undo all the things that you've been doing and latch on to this immediately because I have a time frame before my contract is up to get all this done. It's a lot to take in. And for them to disassociate themselves with those old habits that made them successful, you're going to have to come along with something better. You can't just say, forget all of that and just do this. If there's no success attached to it, they're not going to be interested in it, and you're going to lose your job. I think the best way to do is look at how these college coaches did it, and then find things that they all can agree on, that they all enjoyed utilizing in college, and say, all right, we're going to play like this on offense, we're going to play like this on defense, and then as we get comfortable playing together, I'm going to add bits and pieces of my thing to that. And then in the end, we'll have the perfect amalgamation of what basketball should be for us, as opposed to saying, I know this works, but no one's catching on to it. You know what I mean? Because they're not where they need to be as far as experience yet. You know what I mean? So that's just my thought. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's just an option. You know what I mean? The answer for the future is sometimes in the past. And I think he should start looking at what worked with coaches, because these coaches had 17, 18, 19-year-old guys have with the, like, we were watching college basketball in the 90s, late 80s, 90s on to 2000. We were watching it and they were performing, and it looked very polished. And these were young kids. And if some of us have all been to college and worked college athletes for whatever period of time we were, and we know it's not easy. Especially, you know what I mean? It all has its complications. It's not an easy thing. You know what I mean? But you learn all that complex shit. You learn how to juggle classes, relationships, parties, fun, traveling back home, trying to figure out how to eat, getting the proper rest in, the recuperation, getting the gym in. Such a structured life. Now they have all this freedom and all this money, and now you got to figure out how to get through to them. You got to bring them something that they're familiar with. I think they're lacking something that's familiar that they can all connect to get us where we need to be. We can't rely, and this is the NBA. Everybody got talent. Everybody got stars. Everybody got, you know what I mean, this, like, responsibilities. Everybody got, you know what I mean, their thing. We can't just say, you know what I mean, just show up and play this system and think it's going to work out. We got to find what works. You know what I mean? And we can't rely simply on talent. We have to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and enjoy doing it. You have to find something that they all like, that they can all connect to, that can be a reference point for them to learn from. Just a concept, just a theory. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Darko, I got you, baby. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? You need a little help, you know what I mean? Send an email or something. Send your boy a kite. I got you. Peace.